Hello guys, in today's video you're going to see the 3 common mistakes that beginners and advanced programmers make and how they are compromising the speed of your code. We're also going to look closely at the problems and also I'm going to show you a solution to solve them. Are you ready? So without further ado, let's get straight to it. And the very first mistake that I see beginners do is not using parallel requests. So I'm going to guide you through the code that I have here. Here's just the home page, as you can see, and I have here 2 functions being called that are asynchronous, as you can see. If I go to the first one, is get users, that basically awaits for this function. So this wait function is just a promise that waits for 3 seconds, and I return a list of users. And I do basically the same thing on the products. I just wait for this wait function to be called, and finally I return the products. And then here on the home page, I get the user and the products, and then I console log time and how much it took to get those 2 items, right? And then I console log the actual results of the item. And then here is something that you can do to help me out. It's going to help me a lot. Alright, so as soon as you see this code, you probably don't see anything wrong. You just get user and products, but if you look closely, you're going to see that there is a mistake in this code, and the mistake is that products doesn't depend on the user. So it doesn't make sense to wait until the user is fetched to then fetch the products, because remember, the way that async and await works is that until this line is not finished, this other line is not going to run. Okay, so again, there's no need to the user or products to wait for each other to finish until it gets to the next step. So I made here a diagram, and hopefully is easier to understand. So here we have 2 axes. The first one is the request, so the request bounded, and then we have the axis to the time. Okay, so the longer the arrow is, the more time it took. All right, so what you can see here is that the products can only be fetched after the user is finished fetching. Okay, that is exactly what you see here. But before showing you the way to fix this code, let me show you how long it takes, okay, to fetch everything. Okay, so again, I have this console log.time and console log.time end, then basically shows how long it took to go from this step to this step. So basically what we want to see here is how long it takes to fetch those 2 items, and that's why I'm surrounding those two calls between this console log.time. Okay, so I'm going to refresh and let me see what we get. Okay, so we get 6 seconds and 20 milliseconds. Okay, so let me write this down. Okay, so it got me 6 seconds and 20 milliseconds. Okay, I'm going to refresh again just to get some consistent value, and we get 25. Okay, so it's not too much distant of the one that we had. So what I do to fix this code is this Promise.all. Okay, you might be asking why I use that. Basically what we are doing here is listing, we are showing a list of promises. Okay, so we get the get users and get products, and we have to name the variables, and the first element corresponds to the first variable that I say here. So get user is going to be the user, it's supposed to be users, and then get products is going to correspond to products. Okay, so the second element is going to go to the second element here on the array. So this Promise.all is basically saying that we don't need to wait the functions to finish to start another one. We're basically saying here that we can start everything at the same time, and then once everything is finished, then we can go to the next line. Okay, so I made again here a diagram, so hopefully it's easier to understand. So what we had previously is something like that. So we awaited for the user to be fetched, and only then we fetch the products. Okay, so here we have a different type of situation. Here we don't have to wait until the user is fetched. We fetch the user and the products at the same time, and when the both are finished, then we move to the next step. All right, so let me see how long it takes. Okay, so for this for the previous example, we had 6 seconds. Let me see how long it takes. So let me open here the terminal real quick. Let me go to the console log, and if I refresh, I get 3 seconds. Is the half that I got for the previous example. Okay, so here is 3 seconds, and the previous one was 6. Always use Promise.all in your calls, only if the calls don't depend of each other. The other thing that I don't see beginners doing is loading states. Okay, so let me take off here what we had before. So let me just let this user and products showing, okay, and just the text, and let me show you what happens. Okay, if I go to the page localhost 3000, see that this is taking a long time to load. Okay, so let me even increase the time here. So here, let me say like 6,000 is going to make 9,000, adding with this other weight. Okay, so when I refresh the page, you see that it actually waits 9 seconds until it renders something. Okay, which is very bad for the user. Okay, so what we can see, we have two type of scenarios. We have the scenarios where our page is on the server, and another scenario where our page is on the client. We're going to start with the easiest one, which is the server for me. And when your page is on the server, okay, you are running on the server environment, to handle loading, what you can do is on the same level where you have the page, you're going to create a loading.tsx. all right, and here you're going to use our fc to create the component real quick, and then you can write something here, something like loading. All right, so let me try this out. Now when I go to the page, you're going to see the difference. Okay, when I say localhost 3000, you see that immediately it actually shows something before showing the actual content of the page, so the user knows that this is loading and the website is up and live. Okay, you can go even further using skeletons. So skeleton, if you don't know, is something like this. Okay, it's something that shows a silhouette or a preview of the data they are going to get. All right, so instead of just showing loading, which is pretty boring, what you can do is actually showing some preview of what you should be getting. Okay, so let me just do this real quick. Okay, so what I did here is just a quick skeleton. You're going to see how this is going to should be looking. All right, so you're going to see exactly what happens when I refresh the page. Okay, so you see when I refresh the page, we get this really cool animation from this animate pulse, and once the data is fetched is when I get the actual content. So it's something that I see beginners not doing, that is this loading state. That is something that you always should be considering putting on your websites. Okay, so this is when we are on the server. All right, so how do we actually handle loading when we are on the client? Okay, so when we are on the client, we have to first put here use client. Okay, and then here where we get the data is going to be actually different. Since we are on the client, we cannot do the sync and await here. Okay, so the way that we're going to fetch the data is on the old style. Okay, so we're going to have here a state, so it's going to be users. Okay, after that we're going to have a use effect, and we are going to pass here an empty array, which is going to make this only run once. and instead of this use effect, we're going to pass our Promise.all that we already had before, and then we're going to pass here this method, which is going to get us the result. Okay, so basically here I'm destructuring the results. Okay, so I'm getting the user and the products, U and P, just so I don't have naming conflicts, and then finally I can set the users as U and set products as P. Alright, so how do we actually handle loading states? The first thing is that we don't need this loading.tsx since we are running this on the client, and to have the actual loading state, what we have to do is create a state here saying is loading, can give the name that you want. The convention is loading. Okay, and then we're going to have here a use state which is going to start as false. When this actually starts loading, okay, it starts loading when the use effect is called. Okay, so here we can set is loading as true, and when does it finish? It finishes once we have this then a method called. Okay, this then is only called when this promise finishes. Okay, once this function is finishes with all everything that it has to do, then we are going to set is loading as false since we are not loading anymore. All right, so let me see if that works. If I refresh, you're going to see here this skeleton shows up, and once the data is finished loading, you're going to see the actual data. All right, so always consider having the loading states. Okay, and the final thing that I don't see beginners using is aborting calls. Okay, and what you might be asking, why do we need to abort calls? Okay, let's say that you have a website, and this website has to load some data. All right, and if the actual data takes more than it should to be loaded, then the user might be a little bit impatient and might leave the website. All right, so before something like that happens, you have to notify the user that the call was aborted because it took so long, and maybe you're going to ask the user to try again, and maybe on the next try the data is going to be loaded. All right, so in these type of situations, we're going to use this controller, abort controller. But before showing that how that works, I'm going to show you the thing that I added. It was basically here we have a fetch call to API/subscribe, and again I would like you to do that. And when you go here on this route that I created here inside of app, basically it waits for this wait function. Okay, that basically waits for 3 seconds. Let me just type here wait 3 seconds, and then it shows here console.subscribe, and then it shows here the status. Okay, so if I refresh here the app, this is going to actually show the aborted message. Okay, but before doing that, let me show you this working as it should. Okay, so let me open here the terminal and let me hit refresh. All right, so this is refreshing, and a couple of seconds, I think it was 3 seconds, the seconds that we waited here, we get back the subscribe message. All right, so nice. And let me show you how this thing is aborted. Okay, so first we have this controller. All right, and then we have this set timeout. Okay, so if you don't know what set timeout does, it's basically a callback function that runs. So this is the callback function that runs after a specific time. Okay, so here we have 5,000, that means 5 seconds. Okay, so after 5 seconds, this function is going to be called, that basically that is going to abort this this call. Okay, but before we get into that, we are going to call this controller.abort, and here we have to pass a reason, and the reason is the timeout. Okay, so we run it out of time. Okay, so below that we have here the fetch. Okay, so the fetch, we have the call to API/subscribe, and we also have here some options, and the option that we have here is signal, where we pass the controller the signal. Okay, so basically it creates a bound between the controller and the actual fetch. Okay, so here after 5 seconds we are going to abort the call. So basically what we're saying here is going to, you can fetch, but if you take more than 5 seconds, we are going to abort your call, your fetch, because of the timeout. Okay, so this is basically what we're seeing here. So as you can see, our endpoint only needs 3 seconds to run. Okay, so let's say that may change here to 2 seconds. Right, so basically what we're doing here is saying to after 2 seconds, if it takes more than 2 seconds to load, then we are going to abort the call. Okay, so if I refresh, you're going to see that we get an error. Okay, and this error is exactly because of that, of the timeout. Okay, so after 2 seconds we are going to get a timeout, and don't worry, this error message is not going to show you, is not going to show on the production version, is only on the development. So this is the video, and I hope you like it, and I hope you learn something from it. If you have some other video suggestions, you can hit on the comments. I would also appreciate if you hit the like button and hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.